December 26, 2013 was the 120th anniversary of Mao Zedong's birth. To mark the occasion, Xi Jinping and other CPC and state leaders visited the Chairman Mao Memorial Hall in Beijing's Tiananmen Square to pay tribute to the principal founder of the party, the Chinese People's Liberation Army and the People's Republic of China.
社会主义基本制度确立以后，如何在中国建设社会主义，是党面临的崭新课题。毛泽东同志对适合中国情况的社会主义建设道路进行了艰苦探索。在中国这样的社会历史条件下，建设社会主义没有先例，犹如攀登一座人迹未至的高山，一切攀登者都要披荆斩棘，开通道路。
At the Dongjiao Branch of the China Railway Museum in Beijing stands a special train. Over 26 years, from 1949 to 1975, Mao Zedong took it dozens of times to inspect different sites across the country, covering more than 3.4 million kilometers in distance for a total traveling time of nearly 7 years.
Mao 主席他可以打开窗帘，可以看，随时的看，好多地方都停过，也都是临时停车。早上县委书记或者地方的这个省里头领导来谈话，他就确实很方便。毛主席这个转运处的人说呢，他们叫毛主席的流动的中南海。
From the end of 1955 to the spring of 1956, Mao Zedong, Liu Shaoqi and other top CPC leaders carried out a great number of systematic surveys and studies in preparation for the party's 8th National Congress and large-scale economic construction. On the third day of the Lunar New Year in 1956, in the Yi Nian Hall of Zhongnanhai, Mao received briefings from 34 ministries of the State Council and the State Planning Commission's second five-year plan. On the east side of the Yi Nian Hall was Mao's residence called Juxiang Study. Mao said he was working from the moment he got up each morning to the minute he went back to bed during the 43 days of briefings, with each briefing session lasting 4 or 5 hours. While Mao was being briefed on work reports, the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, or CPSU, held its 20th National Congress in Moscow. The problems and mistakes exposed in the Soviet Union's socialist construction were important warnings to CPC members who were seeking their own way of building socialism. At a meeting of the Secretariat of the CPC Central Committee held on April 4, 1956, Mao pointed out the importance of independent thinking and combining the basic principles of Marxism-Leninism with the concrete reality of China. He said that during the new democratic revolution period, China managed to combine the two only after suffering big losses, and China needed to do so again during the period of socialist revolution and construction. Guided by this thought, and after careful investigation and consideration, Mao gradually formed his views and finished his report. On the 10 major relationships, this document would have a comprehensive and long-term influence on China's socialist development. On April 25, 1956, Mao delivered the report to the enlarged meeting of the Political Bureau of the CPC Central Committee. Days later, on May 2nd, he elaborated on it at the Supreme State Conference. At the beginning of his report, Mao said, "Particularly worthy of attention is the fact that in the Soviet Union, certain defects and errors that occurred in the course of their building socialism have lately come to light. Do you want to follow the detours they have made? It was by drawing lessons from their experience that we were able to avoid certain detours in the past, and there is all the more reason for us to do so now.
说十大关系的这个基本思想就以书为鉴，走适合中国情况的社会主义建设道路。毛主席后来在60年写了10年总结的时候呢，他就回顾这10年的经验，前8年基本上苏联的，到十大关系就开始我们自己建设社会主义道路。
In addition to economic development, the exploration of a socialist construction path also took place in other spheres. In January 1956, the CPC Central Committee issued a nationwide call to march towards science. To promote progress in arts and sciences, the CPC Central Committee encouraged the development of various schools of thought under the slogan, "Let 100 flowers bloom and 100 schools of thought contend." On September 15th of the same year, the 8th National Congress of the CPC opened in the newly completed CPPCC Auditorium. A total of 1,026 delegates attended, representing the party's 10.73 million members.
这次大会的任务是总结七次大会以来的经验，团结成长，团结国内外一切可能团结的力量，为了建设一个伟大的社会主义的正确奋斗。
To prepare for all-round economic development, Mao called on the whole party to be good learners. At the closing session of the Congress, a resolution on the political report was passed, which stated that the principal contradiction within the country was the one resulted from the need of the people for rapid economic and cultural development, which fell short of their requirements. The main task for the party and the country was to address this issue and swiftly transform China from a poor agricultural country into an advanced industrial one. After the 8th National Congress of the CPC, China entered an historical period of building socialism in an all-round way. To the west, meanwhile, the CPSU's 20th Congress was followed by turbulence in Eastern European socialist countries, including Poland and Hungary. Many complexities and unforeseen new contradictions also emerged in China's political and social life. Facing these emerging challenges, the CPC Central Committee and Mao focused on learning from the lessons of the Soviet Union, as well as Poland and Hungary, so as to address China's new contradictions. On February 27, 1957, Mao delivered a speech entitled "On the Correct Handling of Contradictions Among the People." As he pointed out, we are confronted with two types of social contradictions: those between ourselves and the enemy, and those among the people. The two are totally different in nature. The only way to settle controversial issues among the people is by the democratic method, the method of discussion, criticism, persuasion, and education in the formula unity, criticism, unity. Mao's theory on socialist contradictions in societies enriched and developed the theory of scientific socialism. Thanks to these deliberations, the program of building socialism got off to a good start. By the end of 1957, China had completed its first 5-year plan for national economic development, laying an initial foundation for an industrialized nation. During this period, the average annual growth rate of China's industrial output was higher than that of major countries across the world. The living standard of the people was gradually improving. The early completion of the first five-year plan awakened the people's passion for building socialism. Many felt future economic development should proceed more quickly. In November 1957, Mao led a Chinese delegation to an international meeting of communist and workers' parties of socialist countries in Moscow. Inspired by the Soviet Union's successful launch of the world's first artificial satellite and its goal of overtaking the US in 15 years, the CPC Central Committee set a goal of surpassing British steel production in 15 years. The CPC was eager to achieve breakthroughs in its program of building socialism in China. Yet, due to its lack of experience in large-scale socialist construction and its desire for success, the party made the mistakes of initiating the Great Leap Forward and the People's Communes movements, which caused unforeseen and severe consequences for the national economy and social life. To quickly correct its mistakes, the CPC Central Committee adjusted its policies in a timely manner. In October 1958, Mao embarked on a new journey to the country's south for investigation and study. He emphasized that the scale of the people's communes should be reduced and that commodity production and exchange and performance-related pay should be retained. Mindful that leaders at various levels lacked knowledge of economics, Mao recommended reading the Soviet textbook Political Economy and set an example by reading it himself.
毛主席当时已经看到社会主义社会中要有商品经济，而且他认为应该重视价值规律。这次读书中间所讲的这些议论，可以反映出他在寻求中国历史条件下如何建设社会主义的道路的一种探索。
In November 1960, Mao personally drafted instructions to correct 5 types of working styles related to premature communism, exaggeration, enforcing arbitrary orders, cadres acceding to privileges, and blind guidance in production, laying particular emphasis on correcting premature communism. In January 1961, the 9th plenary session of the 8th Central Committee of the Communist Party of China resolved to implement an economic policy of adjustment, consolidation, enrichment and improvement, indicating a new direction for national economic growth. In addition, Mao called on the whole party to promote investigation-based research, spending a year on seeking truth from facts. After the plenary session, Mao led several investigative teams to conduct research in rural areas in Zhejiang, Hunan, Guangdong and other provinces. Liu Shaoqi, Zhou Enlai, Zhu De, Chen Yun and Deng Xiaoping went to Hunan, Hubei, Sichuan and the suburbs of Shanghai and Beijing respectively to conduct investigations. Based on these field surveys, Mao presided over the formulation of draft working regulations of rural people's communes, also known as the 60 Articles in Agriculture. Deng Xiaoping and others presided over the formulation of draft working regulations of the state-owned industrial enterprises, also called 70 Articles in Industry. Similar adjustments were also made in the fields of science, education and culture. In order to review the experience of the Great Leap Forward, as well as seek consensus and strengthen unity, the CPC Central Committee held an enlarged conference from January the 11th through to February the 7th, 1962. A total of 7,118 central and local party officials, including those from critical industries and armies, attended. It has since been known as the 7,000 Cadres Conference. At the conference, Mao encouraged delegates to speak freely and honestly.
会议的主要任务是就坐，来纠正前几年的错。这次会议是一次民主的会议，一，开的时间长，叫你把话说完；第二呢，大众也做了自我批评，这是非常不简单的。
他探讨我们国家建设社会主义的经验教训、规律，其广度和深度呢，超过了8大这个广度和深度。
On December 21st, 1964, the first session of the Third National People's Congress was held in Beijing.
周恩来在政府工作报告中，第一次完整准确地提出了4个现代化的奋斗目标，就是现代工业、现代农业、现代国防和现代科学技术4个现代化。可以说，从此4个现代化就成为激励全国人民 共同奋斗的目标和理想。
CPC-led large-scale socialist construction fundamentally transformed China. People of all ethnic backgrounds devoted themselves to this noble cause and left behind many uplifting stories. Wang Jingxi and other oil workers risked their health and even their lives to build China's largest extraction project, the Daqing oil field, setting a national example through their patriotism, enterprise, pragmatism, and dedication, which were summed up by the phrases Daqing spirit and Iron Man spirit.
我死后只有一个要求，要求组织上把我运回兰考，埋在沙堆上。
Zhao Yulu, party secretary of Lankao County in Henan, led his people to contend with dust storms, waterlogging, alkaline soils, and poverty, despite suffering from liver disease. He was the model of a selfless public servant who loved the people, worked hard, pursued scientific truth, embraced challenges, and ultimately sacrificed himself. The people of Linqian County, Henan, built the 1,500-kilometer-long Red Flag Canal with tunnels and bridges through the Taihang Mountains, forging a legend in the transformation of nature by ordinary Chinese farmers. Lei Feng, a PLA soldier, was willing to serve and help people from ordinary walks of life, demonstrating the noble morality of a party member. The Lei Feng spirit became a shining example for society in the new China. Scientists including Chen Sangqian, Qian Shuisun, and Dongjiao Branch devoted themselves to the national goals of developing atomic and hydrogen bombs and satellites, closely linking their personal ambitions with the Chinese nation's rejuvenation. They struggled for an earth-shaking cause with no regard to personal fame or gain. In their quest to endow the motherland with 2 bombs and 1 satellite, they embodied a spirit of patriotism, diligence, teamwork, and self-sacrifice. In November 1960, China successfully launched its first short-range surface-to-surface missile. In October 1964, China detonated its first atomic bomb. Then, 2 years and 8 months later, the first Chinese hydrogen bomb was detonated in the air. In April 1970, China launched its first satellite, Dongfanghong 1. On October the 25th, 1971, the 26th General Assembly of the United Nations passed Resolution 2758, restoring all the legal rights to the People's Republic of China. On February 21, 1972, US President Richard Nixon visited China, initiating the normalization of China-US relations. Consequently, New China ushered in its second wave of establishing diplomatic relations. By 1976, 113 countries had established diplomatic relations with China, creating favorable conditions for China's later opening up. For a long time after its founding, the People's Republic of China faced severe challenges from imperialists who worked to overthrow the CPC regime through a peaceful evolution stratagem. Even worse, the Soviet Union exerted tremendous pressure on China after the deterioration of Sino-Soviet relations. The unfavorable external environment greatly impacted the CPC's judgment of domestic politics and determination of priorities and policies. Because of a failure to fully understand the laws of economic development and China's basic conditions, the CPC gradually deviated from correct judgment of the main social contradiction, resulting in an accumulation of left errors in theory and practice. This ultimately led to the decade of turbulence of the Cultural Revolution, and with it, the longest, widest, and greatest setbacks to the CPC, people, and nation since the founding of the People's Republic of China. During the Cultural Revolution, the CPC and people never stopped fighting against left errors. It was thanks to the resistance of the vast majority of CPC members and the people in general that the damage of the Cultural Revolution was contained. Socialist construction continued in key areas, and the nature of the CPC, people's government, people's army, and society as a whole remained unchanged. Acting on the will of party members and the people, in October 1976, the CPC Central Committee overthrew the infamous Gang of Four and ended 10 years of turmoil. History has proved that the CPC has the ability to correct its own mistakes, and that the CPC and the socialist system have strong resilience. History does not advance along a straight path. In the first 3 decades of the People's Republic of China, the CPC took on the greatest challenges to lead its socialist revolution and build a new nation. Great achievements were made. China established an independent and complete national economic system supported by its own industry, realizing a relatively fast rate of growth. It improved its people's material conditions and cultural lives, and grew steadily into a country of major international influence. Under Mao Zedong's leadership, the CPC united the Chinese people, fought lengthy and bloody wars, completed the new democratic revolution, and established the People's Republic of China and the basic socialist system, realizing the most profound and wide-reaching social change in China's history. In doing so, it laid the political and institutional foundations for all progress in contemporary China. Mao Zedong and his generation of revolutionaries made enduring contributions to the Communist Party of China, the Chinese people, and the Chinese nation. By the CPC and future generations, they will always be remembered.
从长夜到日出，走过千山万水的路，每一步都是信仰足迹，烙印下新中国版图，从贫弱到富强，走出复兴，为业征途，每一天都有奋斗牺牲，只为人民拥抱幸福，凭着心中坚定信念，敢叫日月换新天，循光漫道，风雨无阻，汇聚起中华儿女同向前。从贫弱到富强，走出复兴，为业征途。